How do you charge? How do you figure out the price? How do you know that you have set the right price so that you are profitable? Not a lot of business owners even consider whether their price is within profitability. They charge hourly, they charge by the day, but they're not looking at all the expenses. Once you are a business owner, once you're a freelancer, which is technically a business owner, you are responsible for all items in your business and life. I'm going to share with you how to do a very rough revenue calculation, and based on that, how you can then select and figure out the kind of price you need to charge. So this is the rough revenue calculation. I do want to emphasize that it's extremely important to remember this is an extremely simplified version, which means that it will not produce accurate results because it is a simplified version, and you'll understand why. However, it can be a really good guide. And for those of you who are not so math savvy, don't like to sit in the Excel sheets, at least start with this and it'll give you a good indication whether you're on the right path or not. So when do you use this? You want to use this when you want to calculate your monthly revenue so that you can understand what you need to be profitable. This is the most important part to determine your pricing floor. And by pricing floor, I mean, what is the lowest amount of money that you need to make in order to pay all your bills at home and in business, as well as be profitable and to pay your taxes. This is also a good point when you are feeling burnt out and you don't know why. Check what you're charging. Check whether it's actually satisfying your pricing floor. And you want to make sure that you're actually making enough money in your business. It might look like a lot of money is coming into the business. You can be cash flow rich, but if your flow is also going out a lot, it will be negative. So if you don't know what cash flow is, it's the amount of money that is flowing in and out of your business. And if there's a lot of inflowing money, you could think that you're doing really well, but actually there may be an equal amount of money going out. So take a moment, grab a pen and paper, and pause whenever you need to so that you can take the notes and fill in whatever it is that you need to fill in, because I'm going to give you some prompts. So first of all, I want you to all write down all of your business expenses. And I mean all of them. So consider your stationery, whether you're buying pens and papers, the rent, your phone, your computers. And accountants do this really well because obviously when you buy something, the value depreciates, but we're not going to go into the technicalities of that. For now, I just want you to list everything that you're spending each month and put that in a Excel sheet if you are Excel savvy, or just add it up on a piece of paper and then see what that number is. That number is your total that I want you to allocate the letter B to. B is for business expense. And in this scenario, we're going to assume that your business expenses are 5,000. I've chosen a round number, an easy number, so we can make some easy calculations. Now I want you to also write down all of your personal expenses. This could be your insurance, the food, going to the theater, childcare, everything. Your personal expenses on a monthly basis. Write them down and allocate that letter P for personal expenses. And in this scenario, in this example, we're going to select 5,000 for ease. We're going to add up all of our expenses, the business expenses and the personal expenses. And in this case, it's going to be 10,000. Now, we all know that the government will take their cut, and their cut we call tax. So you want to account for profit and, of course, whatever the taxman wants. So we're going to call this profit and protection, and I've allocated a flat fee of 50%. Now, the flat rate of 50%, it has 25% accounted for corporation tax and a profit cushion of 25%. If you consider that your profit and protection is 50%, your next step is to calculate what that is. So the formula is really simple. You add up your business expenses, your personal expenses, which we know it is 10,000, which you can see here. And we multiply that by 50%, so that would be 0.5% in this scenario. And if you do that, you will end up with another 5,000. What a beautiful round figure I chose there. So now we can calculate what our required revenue minimum will be. Or, as I've written on the slide, required minimum revenue. And in this case, it is your business expense, your personal expense, and of course, what you calculated to be your profit and protection. And in this case, adding all of those up, it makes a very beautiful number of 15,000. Now, if you're not math savvy, this will be an easy, rough formula to work with, and it will only be okay to work with in the short interim. You need an accountant, you need some proper Excel sheets, you need a proper software, you need things that are accurate in order to actually make proper estimations. But if you're in a rush and you just want to understand whether you're on the right path, this is not a bad start. So let's get specific and see where the things are complicating a bit. So for example, tax is complicated. In the scenario that I proposed, we have the business expenses as 5,000. The tax is only on profits. So if you pay 5,000 to yourself, what will the tax be? Well, the answer is complicated because if you were a sole trader in the UK, your 5,000 will be your income tax. You're going to be taxed on that immediately, and it will depend on the tax bracket you're in. So that is income tax. That's not an expense to the business, which means you will be in higher profit and therefore pay higher corporation tax. Now, if you are a limited company, you would count the 5,000 as an expense, and the tax would then only be calculated on the remaining profit. Now, VAT has also not been accounted for in this calculation, and VAT is also really complicated. If you make more than 90K, I believe that's the current threshold of the UK, you are liable to add VAT to all of your services. So if you happen to be making 10K months, that 10K is not full revenue for you. 1,666 of that is VAT. So the calculation of 50% does not account for VAT. So there are many variables that are not included in this really rough, that's what I should have called it, really rough revenue projection. All right, so B is variable. Your business expense as well is extremely variable. As you grow, your expenses also will increase. And if you do not account for the variability of B, you're also going to see a very different rate and you'll end up underestimating what you actually need, which is why I can only reiterate this is a really rough and a survival figure that you can work with. But the reason I shared this with you is because I want you to figure out how to actually price based on what you require every month. So before we move on, I want you to remember to look into the following: the tax, the corporation tax, the VAT. Check and use online calculators. I've been using Omni for such a long time, and every time I want to just confirm some of my calculations that I'm just doing roughly myself, I'm like, great, I'll just do that. You can also use ChatGPT. I have checked it, and ChatGPT isn't always reliable, even with pretty sophisticated prompting. Treat this as a compass, and let's see how we can make 15K work as a guide to figuring out the pricing. And this is not the pricing, this is the pricing floor. So ask yourself and scribble down on your beautiful notebook, what is your client capacity each month? How many people are you able to serve at a very high level, at a very beautiful and complete level, so that they're happy and satisfied? Now, if you can take 2 clients, you'll divide your 15,000, which is your required minimum, divided by 2, and you'll get 7,500. Now, if you had 5 people that you can serve, it would be 3,000. This will give you an indication of what your pricing floor needs to be for each client that you secure. Then you have to ask yourself, you need to make this check. Are you skilled enough to charge at that level? Are you experienced enough to charge at that level? And then finally, are you confident enough to charge at that level? This is my pricing trifecta. And you need to be able to answer these questions and write these down, because these are really important to mark yourself against. And you'll be able to see how you grow as well. So if you can ask yourself these questions, mark yourself out of 1 to 10 and see how are you changing every day, every week, every month, every year. And if your answer is a resounding yes, then of course it's really clear that you can charge this. But I want you to know that this is just your pricing floor. I want you to be in profitability. Whenever I speak to skilled creatives and when I speak to the clients that I work with, I assume profitability. You've been in business that long, you will be in profit. Otherwise, it's fairly impossible for you to survive. So, assuming profitability, I obviously talk about pricing what you want, but that requires an understanding of your pricing floor. So, if you've seen any of my content, you need to first know what your pricing floor is. If you're a beginner or if you're just starting off in business, figure out your pricing floor and then work your way up to be able to charge that through your confidence, experience, and skill. And then know that the sky is your limit. But you'll always consider whether you can deliver to the client's satisfaction. It's really important. The client is ultimately the end buyer. And if they are satisfied, you're winning. If they're not, it doesn't matter how good you are. It doesn't matter how well you think you did. The client is the ultimate decision maker. I hope this was useful for you as a beginner, as someone who hasn't quite figured out how to see how much they're needing to make. It's a very basic formula. I didn't want to make it complicated. I wanted to make it very simple. And based on that, I hope that it can help you in your judgment calls of what to price. Put all of your questions and comments below, and I will create more videos to support you in your journey. I'm Ivy Malik, the Creatives Business Coach. If you found this useful, please subscribe and share this with a friend.